Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Mirjana Voitel, and together with my colleagues from University Relations team, Oli Müller and Flo Esterer, we organize CFA Institute Research Challenge here in Switzerland and Liechtenstein. Now, a few weeks ago, we informed you that we had to make the decision to move our local final to virtual format. It was not an easy decision to make, but that was the only possibility we had. And another information is that because we have a record number of 12 universities participating this year, we are organizing a semi-final round for the very first time that will happen on the afternoon of 17th of February. So Swiss finalists, a team that will represent any university, please block your calendar on 17th of February afternoon. You will receive more information about the semi-final, its format, very soon in the next few weeks. Another important information for finalists is that we are planning presentation skills boot camp on 26th, 27th, and 28th of January. This is for Swiss finalists only, and it doesn't mean that every team should be available on all 3 days. Each team will receive a 2 hours coaching. So on one of those 3 days, 1 hour will be with Karen Cody, who we're going to meet in a second. And the second hour will be with either Flo or Oli, who are going to look at the content of your presentation and going to help you with the storyline, which is very important. We will send you more information and the schedule very soon. It is important that you have drafts of your presentation ready for this bootcamp on 26th of January. Now, we understand that not all of you are comfortable presenting online and probably even less recommending or selling your recommendation to a panel of judges or investors. And this is why we invited Carrie Cody to help you prepare for your virtual presentations. And we hope that these workshops come in time for your local competitions as well. Karen Cody has more than 25 years of experience in professional development of senior executives, but also career starters such as yourself. And even more importantly, Karen knows ins and outs of Research Challenge. 2 years ago, her son was in the team that represented Switzerland in EMEA final. They won that round and were participating in global final. And last year, Karen prepared Swiss panelists. She was coaching them in 2 days in person bootcamp, and she also worked very, very closely with our champion on a virtual format. And as you know, they again won the EMEA final and they were participating in the global final. Before I hand over to Karen, please stay on mute during Karen's presentation so that we assure good quality and not background noise. The call is recorded. The recording will be available to you in a few days' time, but please bear in mind that this is for educational purposes only and must not be shared outside Research Challenge. If you have questions, you can type them in the Q&A section, or if you would like to ask them, you can raise your hand. I'm going to call your name and ask you to unmute. So without any further ado, I give a word to Karen. Karen, thank you very, very much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, Mirjana, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning. It is my pleasure to be here and to support you with the preparation of your presentations, and especially in this time of COVID, in this year of virtual working. It's not as easy, and I understand that, and we're here to learn together how to do that the best way possible. So thank you for joining us, and I appreciate always helping with the CFA Society Switzerland. So we'll move forward. So before we get started, I'd like to welcome you and say congratulations that you are actually a part of this amazing research challenge. You will learn a lot. You will push yourselves to the limit. And it's a great opportunity to learn, to grow, and to network and to meet people. So take full advantage of this situation and this opportunity that you have in front of you. So let's get started with how we want to work in terms of presenting for the CFA challenge, and work together to get some tips and tricks on how to do this very well. I'd like to thank also Mirjana for having me and having the confidence in allowing me to do this. Florian, if you're online, thank you to you too as well, and to Ollie. These are your sponsors of the program and the people who support you as you do this. So thank you very much. And again, welcome everyone. Let's get started. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about how to design an impactful presentation, what you should do and should not do in order to have the most impactful presentation possible. We're going to work on how to present with confidence, and specifically in a virtual setting. It is not easy. It's not always fun because we don't have the same interaction, but you can get comfortable with it, and practice will make perfect. We'll talk about managing how to present and transition during your virtual call, which is super important, and how to manage a Q&A session. And they give you some key tips and tricks on how to manage your stress. Please feel free to raise your hand and ask a question or put it in the chat box at any time. And Mirjana, I ask you to interrupt me if there's a question during the presentation. I have no problem with that. Okay? So I'd like to start with an exercise to get you connected to me and involved in this presentation. And in your chat panel, why don't you just, a few words, the best speaker you've ever seen and why? If you could put in, for example, a lot of people use the example Steve Jobs because he knows how to connect with the audience. He is innovative. He knows how to sell an idea. Any other best speakers or best presentations you've ever seen? And Mirjana, you can read out some of the answers for me. This would be great. What did that person do? How did that person make you feel? Why was the presentation so amazing? Anyone typing? Mirjana?
Not yet.
Don't be shy.
Steve Wozniak.
Great, thank you.
Elon Musk. Michelle Obama.
Yes, she has a certain warmth to her, doesn't she? She knows how to reach people's emotions. Very good.
Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm. And why is Barack Obama a great speaker? How does he make you feel? What does he do?
John Kennedy.
Very good, yeah.
I can, suggest two good speakers locally. I think Flo and Ollie are good speakers as well.
Great. And what do they do that makes you say that they're good speakers, Mirjana? What is it that they do? How do they make you feel?
They feel confident when they're talking. They know what they're talking about. They look at you.
They connect.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there's a great enthusiasm as well. So
absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, to let me know if people have stopped typing and we'll just move on.
May I just mention that somebody says, I like Ollie as well.
Yeah, very good. Okay. Are there people still typing?
Not.
Okay, we'll move on. And yes, a great presenter is someone who knows how to connect to the audience, brings warmth and shares emotion. They make you feel like you are important and that actually they're talking specifically to you at some times. And the other thing is the presentations are often very well presented. The person is an expert, knows what they're talking about, and makes you feel like you can trust them, that you can trust what they're saying and they're doing, and they come across as extremely authentic. I am sure you have seen presentations or speakers before where you think, oh, that person doesn't come across as authentic, or I don't believe what the person is telling me, or the person is stumbling on their words because they're not well prepared or are not the expert that they pretend to be. So all of this is super important. What do? They practice and they know what they're talking about. They know how to engage the audience. They know how to bring up emotions, and they are prepared as experts when they present. So let's go further. So these great presenters know their audience and their audience's needs. That is key to when you're presenting to someone. They create connection and emotions, as I said before, and they master their subject. They prepare and they practice. Please believe that great presenters and great speakers are only that good is because they practice, practice, practice. People don't just stand up and start talking, they practice. Even the best of them practice, and they know how to manage their stress. So we'll go through all of this to help you be the best presenters possible for the CFA Society Switzerland. The most important question to ask yourself first is, who is my audience? Often people tend to prepare a presentation by putting things into a PowerPoint slide and creating a certain flow. The most important thing to ask yourself is, who is my audiences and what do they need to know? When you're presenting for the challenge, who is your audience? What do they want to know from you? And what is your objective? My objective is to propose a buy, sell, or stay situation to an audience of experts in the field. So what are they going to want to know from you? What is the data? What are your arguments, and how are you going to be able to respond to that? And what do you want them to do, or what actions do you want them to take at the end of your presentation? This is what we do in your thought process before you even begin to put together your presentation. Again, any questions or comments at this point, please let me know. Your PowerPoint slides need to have very clear messaging and a clear flow. Less is more. Simplify to amplify your message, and data must be relevant and legible. If I cannot read what is on your slides, then why is it there? So very simply, that it's clear, clean, a good flow. Less is more, and I'll explain that later why this is so important. And your data must be relevant and legible. Okay. In your presentation, you'll want an introduction, and an introduction is super important to connect with your audience and to gain their attention. And you can start with a relevant story, an impactful statement, or a pertinent question. And I'll give you some examples on the next slide of what that looks like. Then you'll have the body and the central theme of your presentation. What are your key messages, and do you have the appropriate data to support those arguments? And a conclusion is, again, a strong statement to summarize your position and remind your audience of the value proposition that you're bringing. So your introduction, you can start with a relevant story, an impactful statement, or a pertinent question, as I said before. For example, a relevant story could be, this is the story about how Kodak's complacency, and lack of strategic creativity led to its demise and bankruptcy. This is why we have the following proposal, ... These are examples. An impactful statement is a way to shock the audience to pay attention, like, what? So you'd say, the stock market will cease to exist in the next 10 years. Let me tell you why. And then you have the attention of the audience who are going to say, okay, this is interesting. I'm very surprised. Let's hear more. Or a pertinent question. Did you know that the average debt per adult in Switzerland is 142,000 Swiss francs? Let me tell you about the Swiss mortgage industry. And then you go on to talk about that. So it's a way to catch the attention. It's called a hook, and you grab the attention from the get-go, and then you go into your presentation. Any questions or comments? Please feel free. Mariana, let me know.
Nothing else.
Okay, you're awfully quiet, everyone. Okay, and then within the body and central theme of your presentation, the recommendation for really great presentations is to keep it to 3 key messages. Now, I'm not going to tell you you can't have 4, but if you have 10 key messages, they don't become key anymore. It's a lot of information that needs a lot of data. So you need to really think about, what is my objective and how do we put that out there with 3 key messages? What are the most important parts of my analysis, of your analysis? And then you have to have that data to support your arguments and ensure that you state your value proposition. If you have 3 key messages and the data to support that, what are you offering at the end? And then again, very clean slides with minimum information. And it is a great desire of many people to fill the slides with as much information as possible. And that's not good. And I'll explain to you why. What happens is, if you have too much information on your slides, people will strain to read your slide versus listening to you. And you need to be the center of attention, because you are the expert on the proposal that you have to share. Okay? So for example, types of key messages. Our objective is to reach 30% growth in emerging markets by 2022. 11% of our overall financial resources will be dedicated to our growth strategy while keeping our overall budget flat. In order to sustain current performance and achieve our growth target, there will be 2 site closures in the US and 2 site mergers in the US, in Europe. So if this is my presentation about the mission for an organization of a growth need of 30% in emerging markets, I have my 3 key messages. And with those 3 key messages, I then develop how we're going to do that. What countries in the emerging markets? How are we going to, what is our growth strategy? Who's going to be involved in it? How are we going to do that? And how are we going to keep our budget flat? And then how are we going to manage these reorganizations in order to reach that goal? So 3 key messages that you then develop and have your data to support it. This, of course, is only an example, okay? Clear and straight and to the point. This is a positive example of how you would have supporting data. Again, this doesn't go with the slide I showed you before. Clear slide, 3 points, 3 key messages. Here, a very simple graph to show something that you want to show. It has to be clean and legible. If I cannot read it, there's no point in putting a graph in your presentation. So let me show you something that are real examples of a presentation that are not good examples. This was an executive summary that was on 1 slide. How many of you can read that in just a quick glance to it? No. So if you start to read it and I am the presenter, you're not listening to me. You're going, wait, what? I can't read it. It's too small. What's in there? This is not an appropriate way to present a slide. This also is a terrible example of a graph. You have to look at the colors and then look at the teeny tiny information at the bottom and look at the dates to the side. Way too much information, impossible to follow. So clean, clear, and easy to read. Okay, very good. Your conclusion, you repeat and underline your key messages. You remind your audience of the value proposition. You thank your audience and you open for questions. Please don't forget to thank your audience. They're taking time out to watch you, to listen to you, to evaluate you, and teach you something. So thanking your audience is super important. And then open up for questions. Okay. Any questions right now about the presentation itself, the way in which you structure your flow of your presentation, or comments? It's very important that you have the courage to ask me questions. We're here for that, so please do. know there are questions. Don't be shy.
Maybe a short question
Yes,
for
please,
the conclusion
Dimitri.
of presentation. I was wondering, we were discussing it with our coach for presentation, and he said to us to just finish with statement and basically not say anything later on as thanks or opening questions, just to have a high, more impact. What do you think about it? Like, does it make more? Is it more important to make this statement at the end, or for me, it also feels more natural to conclude it with some thanks to the audience?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think it's a great question. It is super important to finish with a very strong statement. So the repeating those key messages, you can start again with your impactful statement that you had at the beginning or something like that, because, and I will talk about this later, whatever you say at the end is what your audience remembers the most. So yes, that impactful statement or the underlining of the value proposition that why you're there, that is very, very important. However, I would say that once you've done that, to simply say, thank you very much is polite. And it also indicates to your audience that you have actually finished. Because sometimes if you finish on a statement saying, this is the reason why we have decided to have a growth proposition for 30% in 2022. And then I just stop, people will, okay, maybe are they done? There's silence. And then it gets awkward. So I think it's important to thank your audience.
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome. I see that there are other questions, so please go ahead.
How many minutes should we stay on average on a slide?
Depends on the amount of slides you have, okay? You have, how much time do they have? 20 minutes to present, right?
10 minutes.
10 minutes to present? Okay. Yeah, if I'm 10 minutes, if you have 10 minutes, then you have 10 slides, you have a minute per slide, right? If you have 20 slides, you have 30 seconds per slide. So for me, it would depend on what you're saying and what information you have in that slide and how much time it needs. You'll have to practice to be able to do the transition. I wouldn't say you have to spend, I wouldn't spend 5 minutes on one slide and 30 seconds on all the other ones. So ensure that the flow is done well enough that you transition like 45 seconds from one to the next to the next. So there you go. Again, make it balanced. I think that's the most important answer I can give you.
Question from Vincent.
Thank you.
According to you, is there a best hook between the impactful story, the strong statement, or a pertinent question?
They're all good. If you're really good at storytelling, that's a great one to start with a story. I've done that before and it can be extremely powerful, but the story really has to be relevant to what you're presenting, that there's a transition to say, we saw that, and I'll go back to my Kodak example. Kodak was unable to follow the trend of technology into digital photography. And this is why in our example, we'd like to propose this to you or something, you know, and you just transition to it. But storytelling takes time. So if you only have 10 minutes, that might not be your best example, your best choice. An impactful statement or a pertinent question is great, either one. Yeah, they all work. You have to be comfortable with it. Okay, we have more questions.
Both of them say thank you. No questions here.
Okay, you're very welcome. So presenting with confidence, the most important thing you can do is to prepare. You can never over prepare. You need to know your complete presentation and not only your portion. This is really important. Understanding what's happening before you speak and understanding and knowing what's happening after you speak so that you're comfortable inside and out with everything that you're saying, all of the key messages, all of the data. For example, and I hope this happens to no one, what if someone goes out sick right before your next phase of the competition, and somebody needs to step in and take over. You need to be completely comfortable with all of the information. Prepare together. Record yourselves when you're presenting. Do it at home by yourself and have someone watch you in your household, or put your iPhone somewhere and film yourself, or film yourself with a Zoom meeting. Whatever that is, preparation is key. And the more prepared you are, the better you will be able to manage your stress, right? This is something that we worked on quite a bit last year, and I've already heard the word basically once today from Dimitri, which is great because that helps me with this. Working on filler words and sounds. They are words that become parasites and super distracting from your messaging if you use them all the time. They are often more present when we're stressed and unprepared. These are words such as basically. Well, basically what we wanted to say was this, and basically what happened was this, and basically has become the filler word in the English language of the last few years. I hear it everywhere in every organization I work with, and it doesn't mean anything. It simply fills it up. And if you use it all the time, and I know people that use it in every other sentence, your audience will only hear the basically, and then it starts to distract from your message. Other ones in English are like just, I mean, it's like, kind of. They're all filler words. And then there are words like maybe, well, what we think is that maybe we should do this, or maybe that lowers your credibility. There are words that actually will lower your credibility in front of your audience, to say maybe, or I'm not sure, or just, etc. So practice and listen to each other if you're using filler words, sounds, or words that minimize your credibility, like me, maybe, or just, etc. Super important. For those of you who are French speaking, du coup is the basically of the French language. It's all over the place. Everyone says it, and it brings nothing to your messaging. So if you're using du coup this, tout à coup on est allé faire ça, du coup, think that will help you realize that these filler words need to be removed from your presentation, okay? So give each other feedback, listen to yourselves, film yourselves, and start working on that. And again, when we use these words, it's often because we're not prepared, or we start to speak before we think, and it's okay to stop, think, and then speak, instead of filling up your sentences with these words that have no impact, or a negative impact actually, on your message. At the bottom of the right-hand side of these words are the ums and the ahs, are filler sounds that people use when they're thinking. So instead of making the sound, simply think about what you're going to say. For example, if I read the last line and I say, ensure you give your team members feedback, you can also practice. I stop, I breathe, but I don't make a sound. Ensure you give your team members feedback, and then you go on. But if I say, ensure you give your team members feedback because you can practice with a family member or a friend, or even film yourself, it doesn't sound very nice. Okay. Questions or comments here? Raise your hand if you realize that you have filler words and sounds.
I have.
I say okay a lot. Work on that. You're raising your hand. Are they raising their hands if they use filler words or sounds? Whether it be in English or German or French or Italian, it doesn't matter, or your native language. I'm looking at you off to the side there. Anyone raising their hands? If you don't raise your hand, I don't believe you. Now, let me put it that way. You will be surprised. Okay, here we go. 11 people have raised their hands, 12. How many people are on the call? 36?
Yes.
Okay. For those of you who have not put something up there, have not raised your hands, I'll bet you that you do, and you will find them once you start looking for them. Okay, there we go. All right. First, we're going to talk about stage presence. And I know that this is virtual, but this is part of learning how to present anyway, so I think it's important. You stand tall. Ensure that your shoulders are back, your head is up, and that you're standing. And the taller you stand, the more confidence you exude, and the more confidence you exude, the more confident you will be. Stay grounded means standing firmly on 2 feet without rocking back and forth or crossing your legs, which could lead you to falling over or at least losing your balance. Stay grounded. You also want to occupy your space on the stage. If you have a big stage, you can move, but you move very determinately from one spot to the other. And you can use your hands, depending on how big your space is, to underline what you're saying and to emphasize certain words. I, for example, use my hands to slow me down because I tend to talk quickly. So I have my hands that I use as a metronome to slow me down when I'm speaking. Voice and volume are very important and are even more important in the virtual world. So if you have a tendency to talk quietly, you're going to have to bring your voice from a level 3 to a level 12. And you may speak a bit louder, but you're only at 6. So again, your most important job as team members are to give each other feedback in terms of these different things. If I have to strain to listen to you, I'll stop listening to you. So ensure that your volume is high enough and that your voice has a rhythm of intonation that I'm wanting to listen to you. Because if I do this the entire time I present to you, for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, you won't listen to me anymore because I'm super boring. See the difference? So your voice needs to come up and down and share your enthusiasm for your presentation. You're excited about it. You know what you're talking about, and your voice needs to be in alignment with that. One thing that's very important about voice, and this tends to be a female issue, is bringing your voice up at the end of a sentence, saying, what I'd like to present to you today is our project. And it sounds like you're asking a question, which makes you come across as not credible or an expert and with a lack of confidence. Listen to the difference. I'd like to share with you our presentation on our proposal, or I would like to share our presentation with you on our proposal. Hear the difference? One sounds like a lack of confidence, and the other is very assertive and sure and grounded. So think about that, give each other feedback on that as well. Clothing, super important to have clothing that is comfortable, that you're not pulling at things or touching at things and that kind of thing, or even ticks touching your faces and hands. You all, I believe, will wear similar outfits, like a suit with the same color tie or whatever. Very important to have that continuity and that it's comfortable. Don't wear a shirt that's too small or tie your tie too tight, or women with a blouse that doesn't feel comfortable or something that you start touching and pulling at yourself. It's distracting. Okay. Eye contact, important in a room setting, that you look at your audience here, you talk to your audience here, and you talk to your audience here. In the virtual stage, it's very different. So we'll go to that in a minute. And working on your unconscious habits, sharing the stage with others. We'll talk about that virtually, connecting to the audience and your authenticity. Are there questions?
Yes, I think Biljana would like to ask a question.
Sure.
Or maybe she just left her hands on.
Okay.
Biljana, would you like to ask a question?
No, it was just rising hand from
okay.
the
From before. Okay.
There is another question I can see from Vincent.
Yes, please ask.
Maybe stay up during the online presentation if we feel more comfortable instead of staying seated. Is that a problem if we have a headset during the presentation?
Okay. So the question was, do we stand up or are we seated and the headset? Right? Okay. What I think is most important is that you are at your most comfortable, and that the visual image of you is there. But you don't want to be too close that, you know, you only see the top of my head. I can't see what I look like, but too close is not good. Back far enough that you're visible and that you can be seen, right? Some teams last year stood up, some team members sat down. I think it's important that you choose what you're going to do and that you're comfortable so that you're moving the least amount as possible within the space, or that you're not, you know, uncomfortable and moving around with unconscious body language. I think that's the most important. I'm not sure, Mirjana, if you have a rule or a recommendation for that, sitting versus standing up.
No, we don't.
Okay.
Actually, the same for headset. It's up to you.
Yeah.
But as I understand from a previous team member, uh, um, judges prefer to see the faces
Yeah.
of team members rather than standing far away. Then you really don't see anything.
Yeah.
They feel presence if you are a bit closer to the
Yeah.
screen.
So there's your answer, right? So it's really important, if you're closer to the screen, that you realize that your stage presence is much smaller. And it's also very important, if you listen really carefully. I have a chair that makes a little bit of noise. Make sure you have a chair that doesn't make noise, that isn't, you know, creaking in the background, or that you're rolling around on. So what's important is that you're very comfortable, which helps you be more confident. And if, you know, Mirjana says that the judges want to see you more closely up front, great. Headsets are great, as long as what's most important is that your audio is good. It has to be excellent. If you have a crinkling sound in the background or whatever, that's going to be very, very difficult. So let's talk about, we'll talk about that in a second, about the technology piece. Any other
Karen,
questions?
yes. What
Yeah,
if we
go
don't
ahead.
have matching suits?
Pardon me?
What if we don't have matching suits?
Okay, I'm not telling everyone to go out and buy a brand new suit. Have something that has a certain continuity to it at the same time. If someone's wearing a blue suit, someone's wearing a black suit, someone wears a dark brown suit, for example, ensure that, for example, you have a consistency in the color of your ties. Let's say you all have different blue shades versus a yellow one, a purple one, a pink one. The continuity is important, especially in the virtual environment, because people will see and connect, and the eyes will go to the changes which are different. So if the background is about the same, and we'll talk about that as well, that the clothing is quite close in the way in which you look when you show up. You don't want someone wearing a bright yellow blouse, and then someone wearing a red jacket, and then someone wearing another colored something or other. So a certain continuity looks really nice and looks very professional. Does that help answer your question? Okay, good. Anything else there?
No, no more questions.
Well, it was okay, super. So talking about managing stress, this is a very important part of organizing your getting yourself ready for the presentation. Learn to gently do deep breathing. And I mean deep breathing, not short, shallow breathing, but deep breathing. The deep breathing will help reduce the stress. It helps reduce the adrenaline that's causing you to stress. And when you're stressed, your emotional brain takes over, the cortisol in your body takes over, and then your rational brain has a hard time being focused and present. So gently deep breathe. Visualize success. Tell yourself positive self-talk. Your brain actually listens to you. So say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be great. We're going to win. We're going to be successful, and encourage one another. All of this positive energy will help you be more confident. And the breathing is important. And breathing is also important because it helps you relax. And then smiling helps warm up your voice as well. So when you're presenting, breathe instead of using those filler words and sounds. Take a breath, because what happens sometimes, if you're super stressed, you keep on talking and you're like this, and I'm like, oh, and what I really wanted to say was, and then you run out of breath. And then you're either going to fall over because you're going to pass out, or you're going to need to stop and then start over. So breathe in between. Stand up firmly and stand up straight and take a breath. Manage your hands, take a breath. So, okay. So visualize success, breathe before, do a few deep breathing exercises, and then breathe in between your sentences or your transitions. And this will help you avoid filler words and sounds. Don't panic if you use one. The more you practice, the better you'll get at not having them. So stand firmly or sit firmly and up straight. Manage your hands. You can use your hands. I use my hands, but you don't want your hands all over the place or in your hair or touching your face or doing all of this stuff. Use your hands to underline important informations, to, you know, reach towards the audience. That's good. And then manage the tempo of your dialogue. When we're stressed, we tend to talk really, really fast. I tend to talk really, really fast anyway, because I really love what I do and I get excited and I go blah, 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 blah. That's not good. You need, especially in a virtual environment, to give time to your audience to really be able to follow you. They'll be looking at your slide. They'll be listening to you. Work on your tempo. And again, I use my hands to help me manage my tempo, right? Questions or comments on this piece? No? We're good? Okay. So for this piece, which is the virtual presentation, again, stand tall or sit up straight. What I think is important is if you choose to sit, that everyone in your team sits. So again, it's that continuity. When I pass from this person to this person to this person, I see a face, a face, a face. I don't see a face, someone standing way at the back, someone closer up, etc. So decide together how you want to do that. Continuity is key, right? For keeping your audience's attention. Have your computer screen at the appropriate level so that you are looking straight at your camera. Again, your voice, your tone, and your volume are so important when you're on a virtual call. Your voice takes over where the body language is no longer there. Enunciate. Open your mouth and say the words. We don't want to hear you speaking like this. Well, the reason why we're here today is to give you this and this and this. Open your mouth. Even if it feels uncomfortably exaggerated, it won't sound that way. Your hand gestures, okay, we've talked about that. Know your spatial availability to do that. Eye contact, I have trouble too doing this, looking into the camera. I'm looking off to the side because Mariana is not completely up front. There she is, because it was in the way of my slide, but look at your camera. So you look at your audience. They can all see you looking straight forward at them. If you're looking over at one of the people on the side of the screen, I'm now looking at Mariana and I'm off to the side and I'm not looking at you. So that's important as well, okay? We've talked about clothing, continuity, and comfort. I think we're good. Unconscious habits, please record them if you're constantly touching your hair or doing this or like this or whatever that might be. Be wary of what you have on your desk. Are you clicking a pen because you're stressed? Don't do that. Ensure you have a glass of water next to you if you need it. I mean, if your throat goes dry while you're presenting, there's nothing wrong with leaning over and stopping and getting a glass of water. I hope you don't have to, because it might distract you and you might lose your flow, but drink the water ahead of time or suck on a cough drop. That will help, you know, loosen up your voice and hydrate your vocal cords and your throat. And then again, connecting with the audience, it's about the warmth in the voice, saying, we have something very exciting to share with you. When you use you, people's brains connect to that. So you can use that. Smile. It's not as easy because we don't have that connection, but it's important as well. And again, that smile pulls your face up and will warm up your vocal cords. And work on authenticity. Some of the things I saw in the presentations last year and the year before was putting on an air of, I am the presenter, like, well, hey, let me tell you more about, it comes across as really not nice. So let me tell you more about our proposal and then move on to the next slide. Okay, so be yourselves, your professional selves, don't play a role don't play a role. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. All right. So virtual presentations, tips and tricks. This is very important. Master your technology, especially if you're presenting from separate locations. Do you have a backup plan if there's a technology glitch? Do you have a backup plan if someone is unavailable in your team, COVID or elsewise something happens? What is your backup plan? Master the technology, master your presentation, and be ready for anything. You have to have great internet connection. You want to have a great, what's the word in English I'm looking for? Bandwidth, you know, I've lost my words, hang on. You have to have great internet, yeah, the internet connection is at its highest. I can't think of the word I'm looking for. So, and a backup plan if there's a technology glitch. Know how to upload your presentation if you need to do it. Know who's going to be changing the slides and doing that. All of that is super important. So practice as much as you can of that technology. And then again, we've talked about voice and volume. Look at the camera and not at the people in the squares off to the side. Continuity is essential. Again, we've talked about that. So these are just your tips and tricks. Transitioning between team members needs to be fluid and not rushed. This is very important. When you finish your part and you say, now I'm handing over to show you the data on our analysis. Take your time, allow the person to take a step, take a beat and a pause so that you're not talking over each other and that you're very sure you know who starts when and when you move over, all right? Silence is okay. This is really hard because when we're stressed, we want things to go really quickly. And also silence is uncomfortable, but sometimes silence is okay. If you finish presenting something, you're going to transition over to the next speaker. Give your audience a few seconds to integrate what you've just shared, write something down, capture all your messages before you move on to the next one. But it's a beat, okay? Do not interrupt the other speakers nor your panel members. This is very important. Last year in the semifinals or the final, it was virtual, and there was at least one team that was not comfortable with transitioning or were not prepared who would answer which questions. So a question would come up, for example, from a panel member, and 3 people started talking at the same time. And then what happens? Oh, no, you go. No, it's okay, you go. No, you take the question. No, and that is not professional. So understand who's talking so that you're not talking over each other or interrupting each other. That's why the tempo is also very important. The transition, I finish, stop, breathe, and the next person speaks. And when your panel speakers are asking you questions, wait until you're sure they're finished. I heard some candidates last year start to answer the question before the panel member was finished, and that's not okay. Wait for that beat, wait for that pause, and then you go, right? And again, know who will answer which questions on each subject. And possibly you should have someone who says, that would be a question for Dimitri. This is a question for, and if you're not sure, you can say, would you like to take this? Or, you know, Dimitri. Or so I'm just using your name, Dimitri, okay?
Yeah. I like to hear it.
Very good. See, I'm connecting with my audience. And then again, be natural and authentic. I know it's tough in a virtual setting, but it's very, very crucial that you be yourself as well. So there you go. Any questions on this piece? Okay. The good news is that everyone's working this way these days. I was saying to Mariana before we got you all into the room together that, you know, a year ago, somebody would be working from home or being on this kind of a virtual meeting and a dog would bark and it would be a terrible thing, or a child would walk in and someone would feel like their whole career would be going down the tubes because I let my family life into my workspace, and today we're working with that. But do the best you can to have no distractions around you. Oh, and one other thing is to have, in terms of the continuity, and I forgot this, so let me bring that up, is having a common background, possibly simply the image of your first slide of your presentation, or your team logo, or whatever that might be. But it would be unfortunate to see someone's bedroom, office, and then the kitchen, and then something else, and with a lot of distracting things. I have seen people be on these calls with clothes hanging over the back of a sofa, or a messy kitchen in the background, and all of these things are distracting and not non-professional. So think about that as well, and how you want to do that as a team to have a certain continuity in what you do. Okay, questions now on this part?
Yes, there is a question.
Right.
If we do not know the answer to one of the questions, or we are not sure how to answer it, how to cope with this situation better?
Yeah. Let me clarify your question. Is it for you specifically, or for the entire team? If the question comes out and nobody knows how to answer, or it's your area of expertise or your part of the presentation and you don't know how to answer that?
I think it's my question. My name is
Okay.
Ina.
Hi.
I think both situations you can explain us how to cope with it better, because I think in this situation everybody is in stress.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So let's start from a team point of view. If a question is asked and you're not sure who's to take it, you should have, I would suggest that you have someone who is the team lead who says, who would like to take this question? And if no one says it, then your team lead might have to be the person to say, okay, I'll take this. And you may simply have to say, I don't have that answer for you today. The worst thing you could do is start making things up. It's better to say, I hadn't thought through this question. Thinking of it now, I might possibly say this, this, and this, or one of my possible, one possible thing I could have done, or we could do is this, but don't make things up. It's really, really bad. You can actually say, I did not think of that. I mean, I think it's the most important, and maybe Mirjana would like to add to that, but don't make it up and start blabbering. And I've seen it happen where someone took a question and just kept going and got lost and was unable to answer the question anyway. Better to be honest.
Thank you.
Yeah, and from a personal point of view, Ina, if it's your area of expertise, I'd say the same thing. I would say, well, that I hadn't thought through that question. I appreciate the question. I don't have an answer for that. I might turn to my team and say, anyone else have a thought on this? And that's it. I mean, yeah. And that's why you have these practice sessions. And that's why you have Ali. That's why you have Florian. That's why you have your mentors. So practice with your mentors, have them ask you those difficult, pertinent questions so that you can be the best prepared possible. If you're not working with your mentors, you're making a huge mistake. They have past experience. They've been there. They know how it works. So take advantage of the fact that you have former CFA Research Challenge mentors to support you who are working and have a full-time career in front of them, but they're taking the time out to support you. So please use them to help you with that. Ina, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you very, very much.
You're very welcome. Mirjana, do you have anything else to add about the question piece?
No, I think you answered it perfectly.
Yeah.
And we have another question: is
Sure.
can we ask for a reflection time and answer later?
Okay. Depends on what you mean by later. I would take the time to sit. There are a couple of ways to take time to reflect. You can ask the speaker to clarify if you're not 100% sure, or you can rephrase the question by saying, so if I understood you correctly, your question for me is, how did this analysis ... bring you to this conclusion, for example. And then the speaker, then the panel person will say, yes, that is my question. That gives you time to think. You can also breathe and say, okay, thank you. Okay. This is, and then you just go on with your answer. So you take that 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 second beat to think. But, and Mirjana, you tell me again if you agree with me. I wouldn't say, thanks for the question, let me think about it, go on to other people. No, because if you go onto another screen to somebody else to a different question, you could be in the background looking something up, which is not okay either. So if you can't answer the question, you can't, but you can certainly pause and take the time to think and ask and reformulate, buys you time. Does that help?
I would agree with Karen on this. I have never seen somebody postpone the question to later. That disrupts the
flow.
discussion. Yeah. So I think Guido wants to ask something.
Sure.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Guido.
Yes, I had a question about how we present. Like, for me, it's easier to just try, and I know in the background what are the things that I need to say and that I need to talk about, but I prefer to not to have a script most of the times. Because when I have a script, then for me, if I forget about something, it's a huge mistake and I don't know what to say. If I'm just going with the flow and I just know generally what it is that I have to talk about, it's easier that way.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Okay. I agree with you. When you completely memorize something, and for some people that works really, really well, I memorize it and I follow exactly what I memorized. Memorization, however, can lead you to be extremely stiff and not very, comfortable while presenting, because you're like, I gotta go here, 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 and here. Whereas if you know your information inside and out, and you've practiced and practiced and practiced, you'll be able to follow the flow, and you may change certain words at a certain time. So for example, if I say, what's most important about presenting virtually is your voice, your volume, your tone, and your hand gestures. Your body gestures are not as important because we're looking only at your face. So if I wanted to say the same thing again in a different way, I can say, let me tell you about why body language is not as important as hand gestures and voice when presenting virtually. Or I could say, when presenting virtually, your hands and voice will be much more important than your body language. Let me explain. Or I could even say, I'd like to share with you something that's very important about presenting virtually. When you use your hand, and again, so I'm saying it many different ways, I'm still saying the same thing. So if you can do that, that's great. If you need to memorize to feel safe, and safety is about feeling confident, that's fine too. The problem is sometimes we might forget something and we could start to panic going, uh-oh, I forgot that line. So did that answer your question?
Yes, exactly. That's what I wanted to know.
Okay. I have a question for you, Guido.
Sure.
When I asked if you have parasite words or sounds, did you raise your hand?
Yes, I did raise my hand and I did realize that I used the filler word like,
And
which
just.
I use very often.
Okay.
I'm okay with it for this presentation.
See, this is how we learn. Perfect. Thank you for that. Okay, other questions?
Nope.
Okay. So we're at the end. So if you have any questions, please write it in the chat if you don't want to talk. And I think you should simply stand up or open your microphone and talk, because this is what you'll be doing when you present. So you need to get comfortable talking virtually and asking questions or answering questions virtually. So please feel free to ask. There is no wrong question or stupid question. Okay.
So what would you say, Karen, is that, again, noticing myself doing this, what would you say was the most remarkable about last year global winner? What did they do? Was it only the presence, the way they answered the question? How what would you advise teams how to exchange questions in a virtual setup? That's quite difficult, right?
Sharing the questions between them?
Yes.
Yeah.
And slides as well. We have to advise probably students that there is a one person who is going to move through slides.
Right. Okay. And I thought I said that. So let's clarify that. It's very important. You have one person who's your lead, who is in charge of moving the slides through the process, so that, you know, you don't have to worry about it when you're speaking. And if that person can do it for themselves, that's great. I mean, that's the way it should be. In terms of answering questions, I think before you were in front of your jury, your panel, you should know more or less who takes which types of questions. If it's about the data itself, it belongs to this person. If it's about a thought process or a flow of something, it's this person. If it's about the proposal itself, sell versus buy or hold, it's this person. So you need to break it down so that if that's the question, you can also have your leader say, I believe this is a question for Mariana. And she says, yes, thank you, I'll take that. Or Mariana can say, I'd really be comfortable if it were, you know, I'd like so-and-so to answer it. But you should be very comfortable and ready. There's nothing worse if everyone tries to answer at the same time or nobody answers. So it'd be great to have a key master of ceremonies who is really in charge of, you know, directing you where you need to go, where the questions go, whose turn it is, and who's moving the slides. There you go. Okay.
Yes, and then another person who is ready to move through the slides while the right person is answering the question. And then also have a backup if the person who is assigned to move through questions through slides is answering the question, have a backup who is going to move through slides if that person is answering.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you can lose time on moving through slides.
Another thing that I think some of the teams did very well was someone might answer a question and the team realize it's not fully answered. So let's say I answer the question and then Mariana says, Karen, I'd love to add to that. And then said, furthermore, and then adds to that. So the team is balanced in terms of that kind of thing. Okay. But again, I think your pace is super important to allow time for the question to come in, to allow time for an answer, and that you have a master of ceremony directing you. Okay.
Good. There is a question about the format of the slides.
Pardon me?
The format of the slides. Do you regard 16:9 or 4:3 as more professional? I think 16:9 would be something that CFA Institute prefers.
Okay.
We can do with both, that's not a problem, but let's say 16:9.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, question to you now also, not to Karen, to students. Did you watch videos of previous virtual competitions? There are some links are on our website. What do you think was good that students did, and what do you think was not good?
You getting some answers?
Nope.
Maybe we start with raising your hand. Raise your hand if you've seen any of the other presentations. No?
Bruno did. Bruno did, yes.
Yay, Bruno. Bruno, what did you like about these videos, or what did you learn from the videos? Go back to Mariana's first question. Can you just open your microphone and tell us, please?
Yes, of course. Hi. It's really interesting that they have practice and practice and practice, and they know what they are talking about. I think the most difficult part that we have to do is reaching that point of preparation. And okay, it was a good example to understand how to do it.
Okay. Bruno, I'm going to give you some feedback. Your voice needs to be higher volume so that we can understand you better.
Very good.
Perfect,
Thank you,
thank you.
Karen.
So bring your voice up. So what you had to say was great. And so for us to really understand what you're saying, bring your voice up. It's super important. So yes, please go watch those other presentations. And you have a bigger challenge knowing that you have to present in a virtual world. It is different. When you present on stage is one thing, but there's all, and because you're all together and you can transition from one to the other, you can look at each other, you can see body languages, you can give a sign to someone that you're ready to pass over. It's much more complicated in a virtual world. So you're practicing and getting comfortable with this is super, super important. Don't wait till the last minute and say, okay, the presentation's ready now, and 2 days before start working with the technology. That's not going to help. Yeah. You have another question?
Yes, there is a question about colors. Which color is more professional to use on the presentation? And how many colors can we use for the presentation?
Okay. I'm thinking, so I'm pausing. I could say, thank you for your question. And so if I understand you correctly, your question is, I think it depends on who your client is. So your financial analysis, you might want to stay with some clean lines with the company colors of the company that you're analyzing. So if their company colors are red and white, you can stay with the red and white. What I would avoid greatly is going all over the place with lots of different colors. It's distracting again. It's a question of continuity. The brain goes to, wow, yellow there, blue there, pink there, green there. So, you know, fine if you use blue or black lettering or even dark brown lettering like I have. That's that's part of my company brand and my colors. I wouldn't go, and you see only have 2 different colors. I wouldn't go all over the place with lots of color. It's distracting. So yeah, keep it clean, simple, professional. Yes.
Do you have any tips on how to answer straight to the point during Q&A? What should students do if the judges' questions are not clearly formulated?
I would reformulate to ask them, because that can happen. You are absolutely right. And I listened to the final, and I was present at the final last year, and some of the people on the panel ask questions that kind of go on and may have 3 questions in one. So that becomes difficult. Yes. So reformulating is great. Or you could say, if I understand you correctly, your first question is this, and your second question is this. Get a confirmation and then say, okay, I'll end for the first question and then answer. And for the second question, and then you answer, right? Nothing wrong with clarifying. It's much better to clarify the question with your panelist than to start speaking and not knowing exactly what you're supposed to say. And then when you answer, and this is part of your question, which is great, be concise in your answer. Don't go over and answer the question that the person asks you. And I don't have a great CFA question, but I can give you an example, for example, done in an interview. If someone in an interview says to you, tell me what you've been doing professionally since you left university, and this has happened to me because I was a recruitment expert for many, many years. Sometimes the candidates will say, oh, okay, well, my name is Bruno, and I was born in Lugano, and I went to primary, and that wasn't the question. So be very focused and very attentive, active listening. What is the question that's being asked? Because when I ask that question, I want someone to say, after leaving university in July of 2019, I took an internship. That's what I'm looking for. So answer the question you're being asked, and you can stop, and you can even say, I was going to say something and I'm not sure. So Miriana, correct me if I'm wrong. I may stop at a certain point and say, do you have everything you need from my answer? I'm not sure if you can do that in the panel, but I would do that. Say, I hope that answers your question. And they might say, well, so yeah, I hope that answers your question. They might say, no, I was looking for more of this. And then you go on. All right. If you're afraid to and if you start to get lost in the details, stop yourself. Just say, I'll stop here. I hope that answers your question. Okay. If you realize that you're rambling, I'll stop you.
That's a very good feedback. Yes. Something that just came to my mind is to remind students that judges did not see your reports. They are seeing your presentation for the very first time. Graders are seeing your reports and they will not see your presentation. So keep that in mind. Don't assume that judges know details of your reports once you're presenting to them.
But the details, you should know them. They shouldn't be all stuffed into the presentation themselves. Your presentation is a background to help you follow a certain flow, to go from an introduction to your key messages, to your proposal, to your ending. The details are up here and have been practiced and you know them and you're able to talk through them, and your slide is a support. That's it. Okay.
Can we use animation on the slides?
Some have. It should be simple, but also remember, in a virtual presentation, it may be difficult. So I would practice and be sure. And my question would be, what is the point of the animation? Does it bring something important to the presentation? Is it a distraction? Is it just because it's fun to create that kind of thing? I'm not going to say no, but be careful about why. You don't want, for example, animated movements throughout every PowerPoint presentation, bullet points. They want to come down clearly and within a flow. You don't want one flying in and then one twisting in and one twisting out and coming onto the slide. So if you have an animation, it could be, for example, let me show you the flow of this company's warehousing system, for example, and you have a little chart that moves. Why not? But again, make sure it works with the technology.
I have another question.
Sure, Matthias. Hi.
For the Q&A, do you think it's important to have a moderator for every question that is asked, or is it more professional if we already know who's answering it? Yeah, that's the question actually.
I think that's up to you, how you're comfortable. What's most important is that, Matthias, if you know that that's your question, that you take it and that somebody else isn't trying to take it at the same time, okay? And that you start talking over each other. So you have to make it work for your team. You have to make it work for you. Your moderator might say, this is Matthias's area of expertise, or I don't know. It has to work for all of you. And again, what's most important for me, and that's why I think a moderator helps, is that two people aren't talking over each other, or there is massive silence because nobody knows who needs to take the question. That will be the biggest challenge of your presentation, because you can't just look to the side and go, would you like to take the question, or how about you, or shall I take it? And yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Did I answer your question? I didn't totally answer it.
No, I think so.
Okay. It's up to your team how comfortable you are and that you're very solid in the question and answering. Okay. So again, practice way before you have to be in front of the panel, not 2 days before. All right.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Something that we did not mention is that there are no strict rules when it comes to virtual presentation for Research Challenge. So if all team members would like to be in one room and just exchange in front of camera, that's possible. Or you can decide to have people remotely and just join that meeting.
Yeah, as long as there aren't any confinement issues or, yeah, very good. Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
If one of our team members slows down, is it wrong to speed up a little?
Yeah, you want to make sure you meet that 10-minute mark. I remember last year, the team was from Lausanne was still speaking, and it was like 9 minutes and 20 seconds, 9 minutes and 30, and it gets very stressful, but they finished right on time. Again, practice makes perfect. know your tempo, know your time. If you speed up a little bit, the quickness with what you speak is fine. But I don't understand why someone should be slowing down unless they're getting lost in the details and they're over talking on their slides and their allotted time. So that is for me all about practice. If you're all in the same room, you might be able to, you know, someone might be able to look at someone without the camera looking at you, but yeah, you need to be succinct in what you're saying. You need to be prepared. You need to be aware if you're losing. And again, if you get lost in the details, just stop and say, I'm moving on to and move on to the next point. But if you speed up a tiny bit, I don't think it will be noticed. If I'm speaking at this frequency, you know, or this tempo now, and I speak slightly faster as I go through the questions, no one would really notice. But you don't want to be speaking super fast like this, like rushing through your part because someone else is slowing down. So what you might have to do if someone really does take more time is that you synthesize even more what you are going to say, and what will be said, the rest will come out in the questions. But I think that means that you just need to practice, 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 and give each other feedback and be willing to hear it from one another. Yeah.
Karen, Sam has a very tough question for you. How
Okay.
would you improve last year's team's presentation?
They were so good. The team from Lausanne was so good, and I was so proud of them. And if it had been up to me, they would have won. But what could they have? They answered every single question without hesitation. They answered every question without talking over each other. They were so well prepared. I honestly had no constructive feedback to give the team. How's that? I thought they were awesome. They were so well prepared. Yeah, they worked well as a team. They practiced a lot. They got together, they helped each other, and they worked with their coach, their mentor, and they asked me a lot of questions after the boot camp. They came to me for advice, and you all can do that as well. I'm here for you for that. So yeah, I don't know what to say about the team from last year. They were absolutely awesome. And if you haven't listened to their presentation, please go and do that. So.
Karen, what would you say, how important is the the presence of other team members while one person is answering? Because mind you, there will be other people looking at that 5 faces or 4 faces there.
That's something I hadn't thought about when I get in the tips and tricks. So that's a great question. Thank you for that. You want to stay present. You want to stay looking at the screen. You want to be fully listening to your team member who might have missed something. Let's say your team member's talking about a part of the project and then transitions to you. You may in that transition say, thank you for that. And I'm reminding everyone this point, and then you go on because you're picking up where that person might have failed. So it is super important to stay connected. Do not have your cell phones somewhere where you're off the screen looking at them. You need to be professional and present at all times. You can nod from time to time and agree with what they're saying, smile, whatever, but stay present. Yeah, absolutely need to be present. You're a team. It's not an individual, 5 individuals presenting 5 different things. You are a team. Yeah. And if you're in one room together, then you're standing together and you can smile and you stay focused. Yeah.
Yeah. And what other team members especially did last year, they were all smiling. Yeah. That makes a big, big difference because it shows that you're actually enjoying it.
And listening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And supporting your team. I mean, that smile can just support someone who's a little more stressed than you are. So it helps. It really helps a lot. Yeah. Okay.
Where can we find last year's presentation? If you go to our website, CFA Society Switzerland, under partners, under universities, under CFA Institute Research Challenge, and then you will see a link to past winners. There you will find a representation of, virtual even presentation of the last year EMEA regional final. Yeah. Good. Any more questions? if there are no more questions, I'm going to send you a link to a survey in the chat now. So
Great.
we would really appreciate if you spend 1 minute to give us a feedback on today's webinar.
Yeah.
I would like to thank Karen very, very much. This was very insightful, I believe, to everyone. I'm happy to share your email with students, Karen, if they have any further questions.
Yeah, I would love that. I'd share my email and I will send you the final version of the slides. They can have them and use them as a reference for the things that we talked about today. And please feel free to reach out to me. I will see you also in February or January. I can't remember for the rest of the boot camp, for those who continue on. I want to wish you the best of luck with your presentations. You should be very proud already to be part of this amazing process. It's so much fun. And if you need, see, I just said, and if you need anything, please reach out. You'll have this. And thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions. And thank you, Mirjana, for having me here today.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for asking questions.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.